and agnostics, and tonight we'll be talking about logical fallacies. Now, there are two valid reasons to disagree with an argument. You can disagree with the factual content, which we try to cover in some other lectures, and or you can disagree with the logical structure. If it's a bad logical argument, it is not a good argument. Anything else, personal opinions and all that, is not a valid reason to disagree. You're just slinging opinions back and forth. What are fallacies? The fallacies we'll be talking about tonight are informal fallacies for the most part. And they are just common little parts of arguments that are wrong or bases for arguments that are wrong. The formal fallacies are argument structures that are incorrect, and we will not be talking about that. If you want to learn more about logic in general, take a philosophy class or get a intro logic book. It's very interesting stuff. Now, why do we care? Being able to analyze the logic of an argument is part of critical thinking. It's not so you can just sit there and call out logical fallacies. That just doesn't really progress the conversation. What's more important is you understand why a fallacy is wrong, or what the problem with logic of a fallacy is, and you can address that rather than just calling out a name. So the first one is circular reasoning. This is one of the formal fallacies, and I think the only one we'll be covering tonight, but that's not important. So in circular reasoning, the truth of a premise relies on the conclusion. So, for example, this is similar to begging the question, where the conclusion is stated as one of the premises. So, like if you are saying the Bible is true and God exists because it says so in the Bible, that is circular because for the Bible to be true, it relies on the existence of God. For an example, we're using a couple of screenshots from proofthatgodexists.org. This is Cy ten Bruggenkate's website, and it goes through presuppositional apologetics. And I have a special place in my heart for presuppositional apologetics. That's what pissed me off enough to start reading and actually get into atheism, other than just arguing from what I knew. So the first slide on this page, you go through, you have a couple of choices. Absolute truth exists, does not exist. You click on one of them, and then you get a couple of false dichotomies here and little rhetorical games. And it's extremely irritating. I recommend everyone go to it if you go through a URL blocker so that you're not actually giving them hits. But you go through a long string of questions, and this is what you get at the end. The proof that God exists is that without God, you can't prove anything. A little bit circular. God exists because God exists. The next fallacy is the argument from ignorance. Now, this is accepting a proposition because the opposite can't be true, can't be proven to be true. That's either saying something can't be proven to be correct or true, or saying that something, never mind. I got lost there. All right, so you can't prove that God doesn't exist, so therefore God must exist. This is Russell's teapot. Russell's teapot orbits Mars. You can never tell me that Russell's teapot does not exist. You can go out there for 1,000,000 years with 1,000,000 spaceships and you will never find it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So therefore it must exist, right? Another example of circular argument from ignorance is the invisible pink unicorn. Now, you can tell me all day that there is no invisible pink unicorn standing behind me, but I won't believe you, because I believe that there is an invisible pink unicorn standing behind me, and you can't prove me wrong, so therefore I am right. That is argument from ignorance. The next is argument from personal incredulity. That's when you just can't believe something because it's difficult or complex. And for an example, we have some guy that I don't know who it is talking to Richard Dawkins.
Here we have this phenomenally sophisticated information processor, which is the cell. Am I really to believe that that information processing capacity simply came about by the laws of nature and random processes without a mind?
Yes.
Well, I find that impossible to believe in mathematician.
I know you do. This is called the argument from personal incredulity.
Okay, and at any point, if anybody has any questions or wants to chime in, go ahead and raise your hand or something, and we'll make it a little bit more of a discussion. A straw man argument is misrepresenting your opposition so that you have an easier position to defend or an easier position to attack. For an example, this is Kirk Cameron in a Nightline debate presenting some evidence for evolution.
Science has never found a genuine transitional form that is one kind of animal crossing over into another kind, either living or in the fossil record. And there's supposed to be billions of them. Now, what I'm about to show you does not exist. These were actually created by our graphic artists, but I want you to keep your eye out for this, because this is what evolutionists have been searching for hundreds of years. All right, and if you find one of these, you could become rich and famous. So here's some transitional forms. This is called the crocodile. Can you see this?
So he's misrepresenting what evolution is looking for so that he can show how ridiculous it is. Other common straw man arguments are like, if you've listened to William Lane Craig, he says, science believes that we came from mud puddles. Lightning struck a mud puddle and out popped life. Other common ones are the Big Bang. Nothing just exploded into everything. And all kinds of straw man arguments for difficult arguments that people don't understand.
What about asking where did God come from?
Exactly. That's the infinite regress. Yeah, the unmoved prime mover that doesn't need to be moved. And that would be special pleading. Equivocation. Equivocation is using different definitions for a word in the same sentence, or using a word in one context when you are using a word in one context when you are using it in a different context. So our first example is faith. Everyone needs faith. You have faith when you sit down in a chair that it will hold you, and you have faith in your friends, and you have faith in your friends that they will support you, and I have faith in Jesus Christ. Here's three different definitions of faith in the same sentence, and they're trying to support Jesus, the faith in Jesus, which is an unfounded belief based on that has no evidence to support it, on the version of faith where you sit down in a chair, you have historical context that chairs will hold you up, and you have no reason to believe the chair won't hold you up. It's held you up every other time unless it breaks. That's a different kind of faith. And the faith in your friends is a trust based on historical evidence and your relationship, which provides you with further evidence. The three different contexts, the two contexts of trust and your understanding of the world around you based on evidence, it tries to support baseless belief in Jesus or God. Another common equivocation is theory. When people are arguing against evolution or Big Bang or anything else, they say, well, it's just a theory. Just a theory in the colloquial sense doesn't mean, or in the colloquial sense is, Bubba Joe down the road has a theory on why his moonshine's so good. Theory in a scientific sense is the highest level of proof. It is a body of knowledge, and they have nothing to do with each other. Next is composition and division. That is applying attributes of part to the whole, or parts of the whole, or attributes of the whole to parts. So in the Bible, Jesus said, love your neighbor. So therefore, God is love. Jesus also cursed a fig tree for not producing fruit out of season, so that no one could ever eat from it again. Because he said some nice things, and there are some nice things in the Bible, it doesn't mean that the Bible is a good book or it's a nice book. There's a lot of bad stuff in there also. This is from the Blue Letter Bible. It is a summary on a position of evolution, and I just copied this one little part. Life doesn't come from non-life. This is a scientific fact. There's a big difference between a dead cell and a living one, and so on. He's using a composition and division because carbon, water, phosphorus, the components of life show no properties of life. They aren't alive. And he's saying that when they come together in the right way and all that, it can't ever produce life. And we are obviously alive, and those are the component parts. And so it is wrong. Appeal to authority. Appeal to authority only applies when you're appealing to an unqualified authority. If you are using an authority who is an expert in the field to justify a position or to back up a claim, then that is not an appeal to authority fallacy. That is, how you should do it. If you're talking about, evolution, then using Dawkins is a good source. If you're talking about, evolution and you want to use Krauss, is not such a good source. So an example is Dr. Jack Cuzo found evidence of human and dinosaur cohabitation. And this evidence was in the form of cave art that he found in France. This is his caption from his book, Buried Alive. And this is what he found in a cave. Up top they have the shapes, the dinosaur and the mammoth, removed, but this is the cave wall as a whole. Now, you can see it a little better. So you might be wondering who Dr. Jack Cuzo is, and he is an orthodontist in New Jersey. Not an authority in anthropology or history or paleontology or anything else that would have any relevance on cave paintings and prehistoric man. Appeal to ancient wisdom. Because something has been around for a very long time, it must be right. You hear this a lot with, to justify the Bible, to justify religion, but you also hear it for naturalistic claims like the hippie stuff. Ancient Eastern medicine, has to know what they're doing because they've been doing it for thousands of years. One example is acupuncture. There is no studies that show any efficacy for acupuncture, yet people still, have their pets, stuck with needles. They stick themselves with needles. They use it to try to quit smoking and lose weight and relieve pain and all this other stuff that it has no scientific backing for. Other ancient wisdom that we might use, how about a trepanning? It's not really used anymore, but it is ancient wisdom. Just because something is old doesn't mean that it's right. The next, ad hominem attack. Now, an ad hominem is when you attack a person rather than an argument. And this is an example. They're comparing Donald Trump to Hitler and not really addressing anything that he's saying. Now, what his specific stances may be or are similar to aren't addressed. They're just calling him a damn Nazi. What isn't an ad hominem attack is if you insult somebody. If you're talking to somebody about biblical slavery and they're supporting it, saying they're pro-slavery, and you say slavery is wrong because it violates the no harm principle, and you're an immoral asshole, then that is just fine. That's not an ad hominem attack. That is just an insult. Ridicule also isn't necessarily ad hominem if you are addressing an argument. No true Scotsman fallacy. With a no true Scotsman, you exclude counterexamples to maintain an argument. With, let's see, so a couple examples. Christians who lost their faith were never real Christians. You exclude the people who fall away so that Christianity is always true. God is love. Anyone who uses God to justify violence isn't a real Christian. Now, once again, you exclude the people that don't believe like you. But if everyone in Christianity, everyone who identified as Christian, was able to set the definition of what a Christian is, there would be no Christians, because everyone would have mutually exclusive definitions. Another example is Islam is a religion of peace. Those who use it to justify violence aren't real Muslims. You hear this a lot with ISIS, that they aren't real Muslims. Well, guess what? They are real Muslims. They are following precedent of the Prophet. They are following commands in the Quran and the Hadith. They identify as Muslim. There is no way you can say that they aren't Muslim. This is an example I saw in a Facebook post. A couple people talking. Guy says he doesn't follow the biblical prohibition on homosexuality because Jesus says don't judge. And someone says this is a real Christian. If you asked Westboro Baptist Church, they would say that this guy isn't a real Christian because he's not following the Bible on homosexuality.
what was that again? Just go back. Okay.
Now go ahead and read it.
So basically, this is just an example of like excluding because he believes a newer precedent set by the New Testament so far.
Yeah, he's excluding the people who believe that, or by saying this is an actual Christian, you're implying that people who take the prohibitions on homosexuality in Leviticus, that they are not true Christians.
Okay.
And then, if you were to ask people who support or who believe in Leviticus, then they would say that people who don't follow that mandate are not true Christians. And in the end, you have no Christians. And next is a false dichotomy. False dichotomy is similar to a false dilemma, same thing. It's an either-or fallacy where you're only presented with two options, but there may be a third option that isn't presented. A couple examples: you're either with us or against us. Another one is if we evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? This is implying that the only options are evolution is not true and there are monkeys, or evolution is true and there shouldn't be monkeys. Another example with feminism. Are there more options than being either a feminist or an asshole? With a false dichotomy, a dichotomy can be set up to where it is not a fallacy. For example, if you were to say there either is a God or there isn't, and if there is a God, it is either an intervening God or it isn't. Now those are two dichotomies that are not false, because you are having a finite set in one option and everything else that doesn't belong in the set in the other option. If you were to have two finite sets and nothing outside of it, that would be a false dichotomy. Ad misericordiam. I'm probably not saying that right, but it is an appeal to sympathy. It often takes shape in the statement, think about the children, or do it for the children. If you've ever watched one of the ASPCA videos, that's a appeal to sympathy argument. And it is manipulative logic because it seeks to tug at your emotions and give you an emotional response rather than actually presenting an argument and justifying it. This is one example for gun control. Dead kid. If you want to use dead kids for something, since guns make up about 2% of children's deaths, you might be better off using, arguing against hot dogs in bathtubs. This is another example. If just the photo on itself, or just the photo in itself with needles in a little puppy's head, is something that would incite an emotional response, and that's why I chose it over needles in somebody's face. But since it was accompanied by an argument and more than just the photo, it's not a fallacy. It wasn't a fallacy when I used it before. Ad baculum is appeal to stick or appeal to force. This is when you have an argument that is a threat. So like, I don't want to see you burn in hell, so you should come to Jesus. You hear it all the time out in front of the union there, all the time. This is an example video of Ray Comfort. If you're not comfortable with Ray, or if you're not familiar with Ray Comfort, you really should watch some of his videos, quality stuff. This is him witnessing to some college student or something like that.
Who is Ray Comfort?
Ray Comfort is an apologist. He has written several books, produced several movies. I don't remember, like Evolution versus God and a couple of others. He makes a lot of money by telling people what they want to hear.
That's his name, huh?
Yeah, Ray Comfort. He's also known as the Banana Man.
Oh, that one I've heard of, okay.
Yeah, the Banana Man. He made an argument that proof of God is a banana because it's shaped to fit perfectly in your hand like a Coke can. And after we're done, I'll pull up the video. It's great. It's great. And the sad part is he does that routine for when he goes to churches and does talks and stuff. He will do that routine just for humor. Sit up there and humiliate himself. It's good stuff.
Could you elaborate on why the banana is such a bad idea? Like the whole selective breeding thing.
What's that?
For those that aren't aware of the example, could you elaborate a bit on why the banana is a bad example, the selective breeding thing?
Yeah, we'll watch it afterwards and talk about it after the rest of this.
Yes, thou shalt
Can everybody
not
hear okay?
murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not. Hold on, hang on. Okay.
Of you.
Yeah.
Now, do you think you kept those 10 commandments?
Yes.
Have you ever told a lie?
Well, at some times, most every human does.
You broke that one. So what do you call if you tell a lie?
A liar.
Have you ever stolen?
No, sir, I haven't.
Even something really small. Be honest before God.
Well, I guess a little stuff. Maybe like a piece of gum or something.
It's a piece of gum. So what does that make you?
Oh, pure, I guess.
See, the value of the thing you steal doesn't make any difference. If I open your wallet, just take out $1. It's as bad as taking out $100 on the thief. And Jesus said, if we look at a woman and lust after her, we commit adultery with her in our heart. You ever done that?
No, sir. Sorry.
Looked at a woman with lust?
Oh, well.
Poor kid.
Your friend over there is laughing at you. He doesn't think you're speaking the truth.
Well, yes, I have looked at a woman,
You've told another lie.
right? Yeah.
So you've really blown it, haven't you? So you've broken 3 commandments. Well, I've only looked at 3. You haven't looked at the other 7. Have you ever used God's name in vain?
Yes, sir.
Instead of using a 4-letter filth word to express disgust, you've taken the name of the God who gave you life and used his name as a curse word, which is called blasphemy. So on Judgment Day, when God judges you by that standard, are you going to be innocent or guilty of breaking his commandments?
I was guilty of that one.
Then you'll go to heaven or hell.
Well, I think I'd probably go to heaven in the sense that that's one thing that from now on I'll try to improve myself and that God might forgive me for the sins that I've broken. Right?
So do you think God should let murderers and liars and thieves and adulterers into heaven?
I guess not.
So you're in big trouble. Really, you're heading for hell, aren't you? Does that concern you?
Yes, it does.
There's nothing more valuable than your life, is there? Would you sell one of your eyes?
Okay, so he sets the guy up to feel guilty and then pulls out the stick and beats him with it. What was that?
You're gonna burn, you little shit.
Yep, pretty much. You're going to hell because you're a worthless piece of shit. You are as bad as a murderer and a liar and a thief and all that. When you have a threat in your argument, it isn't designed to convince anyone, only enforce compliance. It's what was I going to say? I forget.
Like coercion.
Yeah. Okay, next is the naturalistic fallacy. You don't hear this very often with Christians, but if you've ever been to the West Coast, then I'm sure you've heard this many, many times. Don't hear it around here too much, but from some. The hippie crowd is a lot smaller here. But the naturalistic fallacy is because something is natural, it's better or it's right. So one example is organic food. Because organic food doesn't use synthetic pesticides and fungicides, then it's good, right? There's nothing wrong with it. Organic food uses pesticides just the same. They just use less effective non-synthetic. So they'll use like copper sulfate or whatever it is as a fungicide, which is very dangerous in itself. And use less effective stuff for the same stuff. Another argument is wheat is okay because it's natural. It's how God intended, right? Other natural plants that aren't so good for you would include like nightshade and hemlock and other really common flowers like rhododendron and foxglove and everything else. And that's just talking about plants. Then you can start talking about lead, arsenic, radon, and other elements and compounds that are very, very dangerous. Say again?
Carbon monoxide.
Yep, carbon monoxide. Mm-hmm. So because something is natural doesn't mean that it's okay or safe. The same thing with GMOs. GMOs use a lateral gene transfer process, which is the same process that is used in nature for some mutations that are assisted. Because something is developed through gene splicing doesn't mean that it's any more dangerous than the same attributes given to a plant through hybridization or through splinting and other forms. Natural doesn't mean good or right. Appeal to popularity. That is the argument that a view held by the majority of people can't be wrong or isn't wrong. Two examples of this are geocentrism and flat Earth. At one point in history, the majority of people believed that everything revolved around the Earth. The Earth was the center of the universe, and that the Earth was flat. And because everyone believed this, doesn't make it right. Another example is circumcision. Two of the arguments for circumcision are do it because or have your son circumcised because you're circumcised. Another one is you should have your son circumcised so that he'll fit in and look more like everybody else. And these are not valid arguments for any kind of genital mutilation. And I will leave you with this. This isn't a fallacy. This is pareidolia. It's the same thing when you look, it's the cloud game, when you look at the clouds and see shapes and stuff. So leave you with Jesus looking out over the crowd.
All right. I just saw an asshole. I didn't see Jesus until like 2 seconds ago. Just like, okay, animal's butt, cool.
Okay, so anyone have any questions or would like to comment? Yeah.
I had one.
Yes.
So when you spoke about babies, I think you made the same mistake that you highlighted in the slides. When you said that just 2% of the baby deaths are due to guns.
Yeah, that's actually all the hair on the dog.
Sorry, say again?
When you said just 2% of the deaths are due to guns.
Yeah.
2% of the baby deaths are due to guns.
Yeah.
And you said you might as well make any other argument instead of this. And I think it's the same fallacy you highlighted because you're saying that if you can't fix everything, don't fix anything.
With circumcision?
No, with the gun.
With the guns?
Yeah. The way you phrased it made it sound that if you can't fix everything, don't fix anything.
No, I wasn't saying if you can't fix everything, don't, or if you can't, I wasn't looking for a utopia solution.
2% is still, I don't think
Yes,
it's an insignificant number. It's still a number.
But if you're going to use children as a reason to ban guns, then there are other threats that are greater to kids that kids aren't used for. Using kids to advocate for gun control is manipulative logic.
Yes, but it's still not a dichotomy. I think in that sense it's...
I wasn't using it as a dichotomy. I was using it as an appeal to emotion.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, if the statistics did show that gun usage was a significant factor in childhood death, and then we brought up the child, that would be okay if the statistics back.
If you were talking about, specifically talking about the death of children, then showing something that was, depicted the death of a child, I think would be a little bit more in line with what you're talking about.
It's not so much that it's not so much that the information they were trying to point out was bad. It's the way that they were using it.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually listed statistics instead of just showing like that picture, then it could be a valid argument. But if your only reason for it is showing that picture to somebody.
I was going to actually mention one of the other topics, not about the gun issue, but one of the examples that is I think good to bring up about issues in the Bible. When you're saying that supposedly Jesus is supposed to be, always good and all this kind of stuff. One of the things that the Bible presents is that if a woman's gets raped, she has to marry her rapist first of all.
Hold on.
That's one of my examples that people are not aware of. And also, like about virginity. Basically, you're not a virgin when you get married. You're supposed to get stoned.
Yep.
So I think these are more common in our society for people to react more to kind of, because a lot of them are not even aware of them.
Well, in response to that, one of my Christian friends, she considers herself a progressive Christian, I suppose, argues that you have to read the Bible in three ways. First, you read it historically, so you see, well, this is something they believed that was a custom of their time that's much different than now, so you have to throw that out. Then you read it some other way, and then you read it spiritually. I forgot the in-between name. I think, oh yeah, allegorically. No, because it's the same thing as spiritually. Either way, I don't know, but how would we place those Christians who look at it? Is that a fallacy? I don't think it is if they look at it for its historic value and then look at it for its religious value. Well, and take out the historic part.
The fallacy would be in the logic of arguing for the Bible or arguing for God. A viewpoint isn't fallacious in itself unless it's an argument.
I think on that part is the argument to present is if you can show that yes, the Bible was written as a historical document, granted. So that means pretty much everything in there was written back in the time when they did not know science. So therefore none of it can be trusted since it is such an ancient historical document. It goes hand in hand.
True, but what if you read the Psalms and you consider that your spiritual practice and you just throw out the rest? Like the Psalms aren't very historical, they're definitely more spiritual, so
But my point is that if you can't trust page 1, you can't trust page 2. Why can you trust page 100? I don't care what the content is.
There are nuggets of wisdom in every ancient book, in every religious book, in every book, period, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. There are little nuggets of wisdom you can pull out if you look hard enough. But
as far as faith is concerned.
Say again?
As far as faith is concerned,
as far as just general wisdom about life, if you're talking, if you're saying, be good to the people around you, then no matter the context and no matter the religious context, that's a valid thing. The golden rule is a valid idea. Whether whether you're reading it from the Bible or you're reading it from the ancient Greeks who came up with it 500 years before, it's still a good idea. But there are little nuggets of wisdom in the Bible doesn't make the Bible valid. It just means that it has little nuggets of wisdom.
But those are valid. So if
yes.
they
Position and division.
Yes.
They argue that their belief is built on those nuggets, and their belief is valid because they're using these things. But then again, I'm not arguing. I understand.
I believe that in the Smithsonian there is the Jefferson Bible, where Thomas Jefferson went through and cut out all the bad stuff and only kept the good stuff. If a religion could be reshaped to where only the good stuff remained and all the bad stuff was taken out, then it would be a less objectionable religion, I think. But yeah.
But you're assuming that good is objective, but I think the notion is subjective.
If you have a moral structure that you're going to go by to judge what is good and bad, like no harm principle, or something like that, to cause least harm, increase well-being, or if you have an objective moral standard or moral framework that you can apply to judge whether actions are good or bad. But there is quite a bit like kicking in babies' heads, which in any context would be bad. I'm not sure a context. What's that again?
What about murder, for example?
What do you mean by murder? Murder is a crime. Homicide is the act of killing. What do you mean by murder?
Say killing another person, is it good or bad?
I don't think it's either good or bad. That's a contextual, situational.
Which means you cannot make morality really precise. It's subject to situations.
You can build an objective moral framework.
Which covers every single scenario?
No.
Just
Just like if you were to say for your moral framework, both cause least harm or cause the most good would be moral actions, or the greatest increase in well-being. If that was your moral judgment, then you could take a situation or a possible outcomes and evaluate them against each other based on that framework of so an objective framework with situational and conditional action.